The scariest LinkedIn problem isn't being invisible on the platform, it's being seen and still not being chosen. So you're posting, you're liking, people are commenting, they're telling you, I see you everywhere, like you are on all the time. But yet and still, your inbox is still quiet. There's no sales conversations, there's no inquiries about your work or the offers that you have. There's no clients. Like your bank manager does not know how busy you are on LinkedIn because it's not making its way into your bank account. And I get it. I've been there. I'll hold my hands up. I have made some very specific mistakes on LinkedIn that I'm going to unpack in this video that essentially get my teeth in, rendered me very busy, but not very profitable. And when nobody sees you, it is super easy to blame the algorithm, to blame the economy, to blame all manner of things, the weather, right? We start to really dig deep into why we're being seen, but nobody is converting, no one's becoming a client. But essentially, when people are seeing you and they're still not choosing you, that starts to feel very personal. We start to get in our head and we start to question, is it our offer? Is it that we are just not qualified? Are we not adding value? We start to think maybe other people have a strategy or a memo that we've not been given, right? They've got the secret inside track. We start to think, oh, maybe we need to post more. Maybe we need to sit on LinkedIn for hours a day commenting and like literally doing the most. But what I realized was that it wasn't a values or worth problem. It wasn't personal to me. It was simply that I did not have a strategy to sell. And so sales were never going to be on the equation if I hadn't intentioned and been purposeful about making sure that that happened. So the first mistake, this is like a confessional, right? So yeah, the first mistake that I'll share was that I was prioritizing likes over buyers. That was my focus. How did my post look publicly, right? So was I getting likes? Was I getting comments? And back then, I would have told you that I was creating content that was valuable, right? Looking back in reality, what I was creating was motivational content. It was like generic observations on the online business, the online marketing world, something that was so broad that anybody could like it, right? Anybody could give it a thumbs up. And essentially, that type of content does well because it's easy to engage with. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't call forward buyers. What you end up doing is getting a lot of impressions, a lot of likes. People might even share it, they may like pass it on with their network. But it doesn't lead to sales conversation, that type of content. It doesn't lead to conversions from people seeing the content and actually becoming a paying client. And when someone does share, when someone does engage, it gives you a really nice dopamine hit, right? We pat ourselves on the back and we're like, yes, our metrics, our numbers are going up, more people are commenting. But the problem is that engagement is not the same as buying intent. So someone who engages doesn't necessarily signal that they have an intent to buy from you. And I see this all the time with clients. Somebody sees, for example, a format on LinkedIn or a style of content that's doing really well, and they hop onto it. They jump onto it because the format's doing well. And yes, it gets reach, it gets engagement. So they naturally see it and think, oh yeah, this is what I need to now start doing in my business. Again, they start calling forward the wrong people. When we start looking at the detail of who is actually engaging, they're not their ideal customers. They are not connected to their ideal customers. They're not, even in the same sphere that my client is in. So, yeah, that is a clear indication that you are speaking or you're calling forward the wrong people. So, yes, visible, but to who? And that was a question that I just wasn't asking enough. I'm grateful that on this journey, I figured out one of the things around the content that I was creating and a gap that it had. One of the deficiencies, one of its failings was that I wasn't baking in recognition into the content. So essentially, a post that converts, a post that moves someone closer to a buying decision, needs to help the reader, the prospect, to have a moment of recognition. They need to recognize themselves in what you're saying. They need to recognize that they have the problem that you solve. Recognition is what leads to action, right? So your post that triggers that moment of recognition is going to see more DMs from qualified people. So you're going to see more DMs, you're going to see more sales calls landing in your diary, you're going to have more conversations with the right people, because what essentially happens is they read that post, the recognition hits, and they think, oh my goodness, like that's me. Oh my goodness, I have that problem. As opposed to great post, which like is played out, is done. It means nothing. It doesn't signal anything of value other than someone just had 2 seconds to just quickly tap something out on your LinkedIn post. But essentially, recognition is so important, and we need to bake that into content if we're looking to get clients on LinkedIn. So a lot of content gets attention, but far less actually creates recognition, and the recognition is much closer to conversion. So I think another mistake that I was making was that I was watching the wrong numbers. I was paying attention to the things that were visible, the things that cause that dopamine hit. So I was watching my follower count, I was watching engagement, impressions, I was looking at how many hearts I had on a post. And let's be honest, again, those things stroke your ego. They cause you to think that you are moving in the right direction. It feels good when the numbers are going up. But none of these numbers were necessarily telling me whether or not my business was working. The numbers that I should have been focusing on was around qualified inbound messages, who were sliding into my DMs and asking questions about the service that I offered and whether or not I could solve the problem that they had. That was a metric that I wasn't paying attention to. A second metric that I should have been looking at was booked meetings. How many meetings were being booked from ideal clients from LinkedIn? Because if my goal was to book clients from the platform, those numbers tell me far more than 200 people liked a post, right? They clicked like, great, right? And this is something that I really pay attention to when I'm looking at my clients' LinkedIn activity. Not simply how many likes or impressions did a post get. I want to know what happens after you've posted. How many people sent you a DM? How many people visited your profile? How many people inquired? How many sales calls have you had off the back of your activity on LinkedIn? And were you able to convert any of those prospects into actual paid clients? That to me is far more important, far more critical in terms of the commercial activity of your business. Because otherwise, what happens is we end up celebrating a very visible business, but it isn't actually producing any kind of commercial activity. And yeah, not on my watch, not with the clients that I'm working with. Another mistake that I was making was all around my engagement on the platform. So I was spending far too much time engaging with my peers, engaging with other marketers, people in my industry, people whose content I personally enjoyed, people that I knew people from the networks that I'm a part of. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with having professional relationships with your peers. There's nothing wrong with engaging with their content. So don't hear what I'm not saying. Where it becomes a problem is where the majority of your engagement are with those people that I've called out. So you'll notice in that list, there were no prospects, no idle clients, no people who could amplify your message, no referral partners. I was engaging with people who could not help to move my business forward. And so I had to become more intentional about spending time on posts, spending time in DMs, spending time engaging with others who actually had the problem that I could solve. Because LinkedIn is not just a content platform. If you're thinking that you're just going to post and hop off, you've missed the point of LinkedIn. It is about engaging in relationships. When you're commenting, your comments are visible. The conversations that you have on the platform, they really do matter. The people that you engage on their posts, what that allows you to become is familiar to them. You're nurturing them, you're building a relationship. And if those people are the right people for you, then you absolutely want to prioritize your time on LinkedIn to engage with those people. So I really had to stop treating engagement as something that I did like to support the algorithm. And I had to start thinking more in terms of relationship building and pipeline activity. And then this leads into another area where it had just eluded me. I was overlooking it. There's something called the content to conversion pipeline, right? So in my mind back then, I thought if I posted, tick, right? I had met the target. I would post and I would just treat it as a finished job and move on to the next thing, right? So day two would come around, I would post, tick, jump off. But what I wasn't asking was what conversations were those pieces of content actually leading to? Taking each post as an asset, right? As if you bought a property, you'd want to know, is this property carrying its weight? Is it, there's a term they use in property, is it washing its face, which essentially means, is it like paying for itself? So is this post, I've spent time doing it. I've done the work. I've, thought about the ideal person. I've thought about their problem. I've messaged it correctly. I've put a call to action. What then is the result of this post? What is it leading to? Did somebody message me? Did I follow up with somebody who engaged on the content? Did it move somebody further down my ecosystem? What opportunities were created as a result of those posts? All of those things needed to be taken into consideration, as opposed to just looking at it as a box ticking exercise. And yes, I've done my post for the day. So that was essentially a big gap in how I was using LinkedIn. And when I work with clients now, this is one of the things that I'm looking for, because if you've got high impressions but no inquiries, that naturally tells me that there's a conversion layer that's missing somewhere, whether it's in your content, on your profile. There's a gap in terms of conversions. And let me just unpack that a little bit more, because the conversion layer isn't just about your call to action on your post. It is about your profile setup. It is about your about section, how you're utilizing your featured section. That is one of the biggest conversion mechanisms on LinkedIn. And a lot of people just overlook it, or they abdicate what goes in that featured section to LinkedIn. Wild. Like, why would you do that? If you know what your goal is to get clients, utilize your assets, utilize the resources effectively. And your featured section is one of those areas that you definitely want to control the narrative. You want to control the journey that a potential client goes on, based on what you're doing currently, what you're selling, what your offers are, where you want someone who discovers you on LinkedIn, because essentially LinkedIn is a discovery, a top of funnel platform. Where is the next step? Where do you want to drive them to? Utilize your featured section. Essentially, let me come down off my soapbox. If your profile does not move people forward, we have created visibility with no pathway. That's ultimately what we've done. And yes, I said this was a confessional, so I am putting it all out there. All of the things that I was doing incorrectly on LinkedIn is in this video. So another thing that I had to learn was the difference between claiming expertise and actually demonstrating that expertise, right? I could say I'm a LinkedIn strategist. I help people with visibility. I help people to get leads. That's fine. That's great. But why should somebody believe me? Anybody can say that. What changed was when I started showing more evidence. So, with concrete examples, with case studies, with testimonials, with client win videos, actual tangible results when I started to apply my thinking to real situations. Because what I found is that clients tend to need three things, right? They want to see that you are an authority in whatever it is that you do. They need to believe that you know what it is that you're doing. They need to believe that what you do is actually relevant to their specific problem. And then they need evidence that you can actually deliver results, that you've done it before, and this is the outcome, this is what you were able to achieve. And those things need to show up across your profile, in your content, in your engagement, like weave it all the way through your LinkedIn activity. And as I start to wrap this one up, I want to give you this as a takeaway. So, yeah, this is your doggy bag that I want to give to you to kind of put this all into perspective. I think one of the biggest mindset shifts that I had, and I would love for you to have, is to recognize that LinkedIn is actually a sales tool, right? That should be integrated into your business. It is a brilliant top of funnel tool. I said that earlier. It's where people discover you, it's where people go to check you out, to understand you, to trust you, to even start those conversations, those initial early conversations. But I think the mistake that we often make is that we think that LinkedIn is going to do all the work for us. So we post, we wait, we wonder why nobody bought, and then we blame LinkedIn and say LinkedIn doesn't work. But if you do not have a sales process outside of LinkedIn, how exactly are you expecting to make sales on LinkedIn? If you have nowhere to direct somebody to, if there's no pathway for them to take, to engage with your services, to take you up, what is your sales process? And have you baked that into how you've set your profile up, how you are funneling and directing people, building your pipeline? If you have not done that, I'm unclear as to how you're actually expecting to make sales and to get clients from LinkedIn. Because without intentional pipeline activity, LinkedIn can very easily become your public professional journal. So, yes, you're visible, you're sharing, you're creating, but commercially, nothing is moving forward. So, if you recognize yourself in any of this, I don't want you to go and start posting more. That's not the takeaway that I want you to have. This week, what I would love for you to do is to go and to look at your profile with fresh eyes. Look at it as if you have never met yourself. Look at your headline, look at your featured section, look at the about section, check out maybe like your last 5 posts on LinkedIn and ask yourself, if I was the person I want to work with, would I understand why I should choose me? Don't bother with, does this look impressive? Does my profile look pretty? Did I get lots of likes? Do I sound clever? Those things are irrelevant. What you want to know is, would a buyer understand what problem I solve, why I'm relevant to them, what proof I have that I can actually solve the problem? And then more importantly, what should I do next? When you ask those questions and you collate the answers, that will tell you a lot about what you should be doing what you need to amend in order to start getting clients on LinkedIn. And if you have been listening to this and you've been nodding away and you've been saying, Shalina, that is exactly where I'm at. I'm showing up, I'm doing the work, I'm visible, but I cannot work out why it's not turning into clients. Don't worry, I've got you. I'm opening up a small number of spots. Visibility to client audits. I'll carry out an audit on your profile, look at your recent content, your engagement, identify where I think the disconnect is happening. And I'll show you what you should fix as a priority so that your visibility is leading to a clear route towards conversations and conversions and clients. The audit is £97. I'll drop the link below if you want to take a look. But whether you book the audit or not, I want you to go away and remember this. Being visible and being chosen are completely different things. Visibility is one part of the job, it's necessary. But the right people who see you need to recognize themselves in your message. They need to understand your expertise, your authority. They need proof, they need receipts. And then they need to be directed. Like, how do I work with you? What even is the offer? What is the thing that you're selling? Far too many of us haven't even mentioned that we have an offer, and yet we complain that nobody's buying. Like, let's make that make sense. So, as I conclude, guys, this is day 8 of the Project Freedom 46, my 100-day experiment to build a more profitable, a more leveraged business from my expertise, from the assets that I already have. 100 days, 100 long form videos, real receipts, real lessons, and real expertise. I will see you tomorrow.